Okay, not sure where the video cut off, but I think we're over here on this one here. We've got a log base 3 of 3 to 1/9. That means that when I solve this, I need to rewrite it so that I have a log base 3 of 3 to some power. Okay, I need to get it to be 3 to some power up here, because if their bases match, which their bases would here, base of 3, we can cancel these. Okay, now I'm trying to get from 1/9 to 3. So what's my relationship between 1/9 and 3? Well, 3 squared would give me 9, right? So right now what I've got is I've got 1/9 equals 3 squared. Okay? The only issue is that 9 is on the bottom of a fraction, right? So how did we get that 9 to a bottom of a fraction? Well, what happens if I move something down to the bottom? Well, if I have an exponent and I were to move it to the bottom, that's where our negatives come into play. Our negatives cause things to flip. Okay? So that -2 is my answer. 1/9 is the same thing as 3 to the -2 power. So I'm going to come up here to this one here. I've got a -2. That's going to allow them to cancel. Okay? I could also do something like this. Say I've got a log base 2 of square root of 2. Okay? That's going to be a log base 2 of 2 to some power. And then we just talked about in a previous lesson here, remember our jam? Whoops. So if I have the jth root of a to the m power, that equals a to the m over j, because Mr. Schieber dunked over Jaron. Okay, so for this one, I've got a square root sign there. I could rewrite that square root as 2 to the 1/2 power. Okay, so even if there's square roots or cube roots on there, we can simplify those as well. All right, last thing that we're going to do is we're going to solve equations. Oh, before we do that, there's a special case, something that we all have to be aware of. Okay, and this is log base a of 1 equals 0. And what that means is log of any base. It does not matter what the base is. Log of any base of 1 always equals 0. So, down below here I have a log base 2 of 1. Well, there's a 1 there. That equals 0. Log base 6 of 1. Well, there's a 1 there. That equals 0. Log base 5 of 1. There's a 1 there. That equals 0. If there is a 1, it automatically equals 0. Okay, so that's one special case with logarithms. It's the same thing as with exponential functions. If I have 2 to the 0 power, it equals 1. 3 to the 0 power equals 1. Okay, it's just the same, it's just opposite. Okay, all right, now solving equations. Okay, I've got 1/2 equals log base 4 of x. Okay, now we've got to use inverses to get the x by itself. So if I have a log base 4, I'm trying to cancel. This is a log base 4, so that means I need to use an exponential function. So this is something you haven't heard of before. You've never seen it, but it is called exponentiating. So what I'm going to do is I am going to exponentiate this with a base of 4. And that means that I'm going to put this log base 4 of x up in the exponent. So I've got a 4 to the log base 4 of x power. Now we know when we solve equations, okay, if I do something to one side of the equation, I have to do it to the other as well. So I'm also going to exponentiate the other side with a 4. So I've got a 4 to the 1/2 power equals a 4 to the log base 4 of x. Now, these two are going to cancel, which leaves me with just an x. Their bases match, they cancel. Over here, I've got a 4 to the 1/2 power. We just talked about on the last slide, we talked about our jam. And remember that Mr. Schieber dunked over Jaron. Okay, so the 2 is in the j spot, so it's going to be a square root of 4 to the first power. So I got x equals the square root of 4. Well, that tells me that x equals 2. You need to have this written down exactly as I do here, okay, so that you have an example for exponentiating. There's going to be some questions like this on your homework. Okay, next, I've got a 27 equals 3 to the x power, okay? Now, some of you guys can probably be like, oh, if I plug in a 3 for x here, 3 cubed gives me 27, so here's my answer. Same thing as when you were in 7th grade and you started out solving equations that look like this. You can probably look at that and say, oh yeah, 3 equals x, that makes sense, okay? Well, they're going to get a lot harder, so we have to know how to handle this. I have an x up in the exponent. So how do I get the x down? Well, if you got something stuck up in a tree, the only way you're going to get it down is if you hit it with a log. What's the base of our log need to be? Well, this is a base 3 here, so I'm going to want to hit it with a log base 3. So I'm going to have a log base 3 of 3 to the x power. And if I do that to one side, I've got to do it to the other as well. A log base 3 of 27. Okay, so this is called hitting it with a log. And we had to check. We had to make sure it was a base of 3 so that they would cancel. Log base 3 and 3 to the x would cancel. I'm left with just an x. Now I've got a log base 3 of 27. So this goes back to our simplifying like we were doing in the first video. Log base 3 of 3 to some power. Well, 3 to the third power would give me 27. 3 cubed gives me 27. Log base 3 and 3 cancel. I get that 3 equals x. Okay, again, write this down exactly like I do so that you guys have a good example to work on your homework. Okay, a couple lesson practice questions here. Pause the video for your lesson practice questions. Go through and get these figured out. So pause your video real quick. All right, log base 3 of 243. Log base 3 of 3 to some power. That is going to be 3 to the 5th power, I believe. My answer is 5. Log base 2 of square root of 2. I think we actually did this example. This is a log base 2 of 2. There's a little 2 outside of 1 there, so that's to the 1/2 power. Cancel those. My answer is 1/2. Next slide here, solving some equations. X is up in the exponent, so we're going to have to hit that with a log, and it needs to be a log base 4. So I'm going to do log base 4 of 64 equals log base 4 of 4x. Okay, now I did that with their bases to match so that we could cancel here. That leaves me with just my x. Now I'm going to have a log base 4 of 4 to some power. So 4 to what power equals 64? That's 4 to the third power. So I find that x equals 3. And then last one over here on the right, I'm going to have to exponentiate this. I've got a logarithm, so exponentiating is going to get rid of that log. That has a base of 5. So I'm going to exponentiate with a base of 5. I've got to exponentiate on this side as well. We've got to do the same thing to both sides. These would cancel. I'm left with just an x. 5 to the third power is 125. Okay, you guys' homework is going to be your lesson 64 packet. Answer sheets are already hung up over on the wall. So come in. If you're not here for Friday, come in on Monday and you guys can check your work.